If you watched part 1 in this series, you will have seen that I highlighted 12 women who committed the ultimate act of sin by committing murder in devious, dastardly and despicable fashion in 2024. And in this video, I showcase 11 more murderous women who killed in immoral, detestable and dishonourable ways, treating their victims like their lives didn't matter and placing their own egos, wants and needs before that of their chosen targets. From a lady who decided that her partner's life should end because of a disagreement they had on the way back home from a party, to a woman whose acts of cruelty towards her children were so horrific it resulted in the death of her child. The reasons these women decided to murder are simply unbelievable, and it almost beggars belief that someone could commit these acts towards another human being. Hello and welcome to the Diary of Madmen and Monsters, where we talk about the madmen, women and monsters that inhabit our society, covering well-known and not so well-known cases across the UK and beyond. And if you're a little bit anxious, a little bit stressed, but still absolutely true crime obsessed, welcome to the club. We have a lot in common and you're going to fit in well here. Now, let's get ready because it's time for more true crime. And just before I crack on with the first case, due to the fact that I can only briefly touch on each case in this video, please rest assured that I will be covering some of these cases in full detail in future on the channel. So if there are any details that you would like me to follow up on in the future, then please do let me know in the comments. Our first damsel of death is Alice Wood, a 24-year-old student from Cheshire whose loss of temper resulted in a loss of life for her boyfriend Ryan Watson after a night out together went sideways and she decided to end his life. On the night of the 6th of May 2022, Alice Wood and her boyfriend Ryan Watson were attending a 60th birthday party together in Stoke-on-Trent for a staff member of the charity Heywood, where Ryan also worked as a support worker. The pair were reportedly having a good time at the party, with comments that Ryan was in great spirits and was even described as being the light of the table and working the room. But eventually they decided that it was time to leave the party and that although both Alice and Ryan had consumed a large amount of alcohol, Alice would drive the 9 miles home as it seemed that she was the less intoxicated of the pair. And it was during the drive home that things had took a turn for the worse. Alice had said that during the drive home, Watson had flipped and accused her of flirting with other men at the party, and that he had tried to grab the wheel of the car, as well as trying to jump from the moving vehicle. The argument then continued as they arrived at their home, with neighbours reportedly hearing the pair arguing outside of their home, with a male voice that could only be Ryan's heard on CCTV shouting, "Oh God, not this again." At approximately 11:20 p.m. that night, Wood can be seen on CCTV getting into her own car, a Ford Fiesta, and reversing it out of its parking spot. As she does so, Ryan is seen walking around the area whilst looking on his phone. It is at this point that in her furious rage, Alice Woods can be seen reversing the car towards Ryan in an aggressive manner, stopping just short of hitting him and using her car in what she herself described as a weapon of intimidation. Next, Alice decided to repeatedly drive her car back and forth towards Ryan in the car park, causing Ryan to move around Miss Wood's vehicle in order to avoid it. And it was at this point neighbours mentioned that they could hear the engine of a car revving. Eventually, Miss Wood's anger boiled over, and she would decide that instead of using her car as a tool of intimidation, she would instead use it as a tool of destruction and death, driving her car towards Ryan in a furious manner, hitting him from behind and throwing him backwards onto the bonnet, with his head colliding with her windscreen. Despite this first attempt at murder, Ryan managed to stay on his feet, walking along the road away from the car, with Alice then deciding to reverse her car so as to point the car in his direction and drive directly towards Ryan once again, this time running him down completely and trapping him underneath the car, with the CCTV footage showing an obvious rise in the car as she did so. Upon mowing Ryan down, Alice decided to drive approximately 160 metres along the road, knowing full well that Ryan was beneath her car and was being dragged along underneath as she did. Upon stopping the car, Alice exited the vehicle and seen Ryan underneath the car. She then knocked on a nearby address, asking the residents to please phone an ambulance. I think I have run my boyfriend over. Emergency services arrived quickly and, despite their best efforts, pronounced Ryan dead at the scene. It was later found that Ryan had passed due to traumatic and compressive asphyxia due to Ryan's torso and chest being compressed by the weight of the car. Wood was then arrested on suspicion of murder, and it was found that she was also well over the alcohol limit. Upon her arrest, she told officers, "It's fine, I deserve it." During the trial at Chester Crown Court, Alice's defence was that Ryan's death was all a tragic accident and that she was simply unaware that he was standing in front of her vehicle when she set off driving along the road, and that she had no intention to kill him or to cause him really serious harm. Her account, however, was rejected by the jury. On the 2nd of February, Judge Michael Leeming sentenced Alice Woods to life in prison with a minimum term of 18 years. Our second despicable damsel is a woman whose torturous punishment regime resulted in the death of her young son and her incarceration for 25 years to life. Christina Robinson of Ushermoor, Durham, subjected her 3-year-old son Dwelinia to a sickening regime of punishment before his tragic death at her hands. On Wednesday, the 19th of October 2022, Christina had discovered that, as 3-year-olds often have a tendency to do, Dwelinia had soiled himself due to the fact that he was, at that point in time, going through toilet training and hadn't quite gotten to grips with it yet. Christina, who had developed a belief in extreme forms of punishment via her followings of a religious group called Black Hebrew Israelites, whose sermons she would listen to online, then decided to take extreme measures to punish Dwelinia for doing so. First, she ran a scalding hot bath and, without adding any cold water, decided to immerse Dwelinia into it, holding him down in the hot water as he thrashed and screamed to get out. This would result in burns across 20% of his body, including his buttocks, scrotum, penis, legs and calves, some of the burns being full thickness burns. The pain her poor child must have been in must have been unimaginable, but it was only made worse by the fact that Christina decided to negate taking her son to hospital for treatment, choosing instead to treat the poor boy's wounds herself, completely inadequately to boot. In the weeks and days leading up to Dwelinia's death, as Christina was accustomed to doing so, she used a myriad of extreme punishments upon him for matters that were discovered to be trivial at best. One of the worst being the use of a bamboo cane that she used to beat him with sufficient enough force that it left tramline-like bruising on his torso, doing so multiple times whilst he was already suffering with the pain of the burns previously inflicted by Christina. The judge, Mr. Justice Garnham, commented that these beatings were all administered as punishments for behaviour that was objectively trivial, but which you considered worthy of severe punishment. He also added, what must have gone through the mind of this little boy, being beaten with a cane by his mother, despite these terrible burns, does not bear thinking about. It was also found that the mistreatment of her children didn't end with physical beatings. It was also found that Christina would leave them alone unsupervised for long periods of time, going out shopping, giving lifts to her illicit boyfriend, or to attend nail appointments, with it being said that it was only a matter of good luck that Dwelinia didn't come to any harm sooner. On the 5th of November 2022, Christina would call an ambulance for Dwelinia 20 minutes after she claimed that he collapsed whilst eating food in their home.
He's only 3, yeah.
He's not breathing at all.
He's not breathing. He was eating and then his eyes just went all weird and then...
Okay.
And he just stopped. I've been doing CPR for about 5 minutes.
She then claimed that the reason it took so long to call an ambulance was because she was concentrating on performing CPR on him, as well as messaging her husband and making internet searches to make sure that she was doing the CPR correctly. Unfortunately, Dwelinia would pass from the collapse, and upon doctors and pathologists assessing her son's reasons for death, an entirely different story would emerge. They would find deep bruise marks on Dwelinia's elbows and a brain injury that could only be caused by an aggressive shaking of his body and head. It was also found that approximately an hour before his death, she had struck him with the bamboo cane, leaving at least 19 tramline marks on his body from the cane that Robinson admitted to using. Throughout the trial, it was discovered that lies were a common theme in Christina's life, from lying to her affair partner about her marital status, to lying to her husband about her falling pregnant with a second child. She lied to the police about Dwelinia's scald injuries, claiming that he had caused them himself whilst he was messing around in the shower. She lied to detectives about using physical punishment, saying she had only ever slapped his bottom and never used a weapon against him. She lied to the police about the state of her marriage, saying it was fine, before later claiming in court they were separated. And she told jurors she only ever used a cane to chastise Dwelinia. Then, later, remembered she also used to use serving spoons. It turned out that Christina was a compulsive and committed liar, using lies as a way to get her own way and manipulate others profusely. The callousness of Christina's behaviour was illustrated significantly during her trial via the showcasing of a text exchange between her and her boyfriend. On the 28th of October, 9 days after Dwelinia had suffered the dreadful burns to his body, upon discovering that Dwelinia had accessed some of her tablets during the night and had vomited on the floor, she texted her boyfriend saying that behaviour by Dwelinia deserved a major ass-kicking. Her boyfriend replied, "Come on, Chris, he's a child. Just tell him not to do it again." Her reply included the following: "He's old enough to know better, so he'll pay." When her boyfriend told her to be gentle, her callous reply was, "He'll get what he deserves, no more, no less." On the 21st of March 2024, Christina Robinson was found guilty of the murder of her son and on 4 counts of child cruelty, and on the 24th of May 2024 was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 25 years. Now, just before I move on to our third lady on the list, if you are one of the many people watching and enjoying the video, but you still haven't subscribed, please press the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel to help us jump on the algorithm and grow the channel. Thank you, and on we go with the video. Our third murderous maiden is Deka Omar, a 24-year-old drug addict who callously killed a generous and giving woman, whose only intention towards Omar was to try and help her. On the evening of February the 21st, 2022, Susan Ianu was found dead in her home on Church Street, Edmonton, North London, with a post-mortem showing that Susan had died after suffering catastrophic injuries after a brutal attack in which she was beaten profusely, stamped on and then strangled to death. Upon launching an investigation, the police were quickly informed of Omar's presence in Susan's life and found CCTV showing she had visited Susan's home the night before Susan was found dead. It was also found that Omar had spoken to a number of people after the murder, asking them to check on Susan, claiming something may have happened to her. Upon her arrest, it was also found that Omar had stolen Susan's mobile phone after the murder had taken place. It seems that Deka Omar had befriended Ianu, who was known for her generosity towards those less fortunate, and had quite obviously seen this as a weakness, deciding to prey on Susan's generous nature, taking advantage of Susan to help her fund her drug habit, requesting more and more help from her until one day it simply wasn't enough, and so, in order to get what she wanted, she decided to murder Susan in a despicable act of violence. Detective Inspector Jim Barry stated, Susan was kind and generous, supporting those around her, even though she had little. One of those she helped was Omar, who wanted more and violently killed Susan whilst she was in her place of safety, her home. Deka Omar has never offered a motive of any sort as to why she committed the crime and has not, to date, shown any remorse for the senseless murder. Deka Omar was charged with the murder of Susan Ianu on February the 26th, 2023, and found guilty on the 5th of March 2024 after a retrial at Snaresbrook Crown Court. On Thursday the 26th of June 2024 at Inner London Crown Court, Omar was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum sentence of 23 years. The fourth murderous member of the fairer sex on our list is Karen Vamplew, who murdered her mother-in-law in such a heinous way that it was described by police as a premeditated act born out of wickedness and greed. And she did it all for financial gain. In the early hours of the 15th of December 2021, emergency services were called to the property of Elizabeth Vamplew, where a mysterious blaze had taken hold of the property, and with reports that the owner of the property was still trapped inside. Upon entering the home, firefighters fought back the blaze and found the owner, Elizabeth Vamplew, dead, with the coroner's report confirming that she had died from smoke inhalation and burns. Upon conducting an investigation into the cause of the fire, suspicion quickly arose around Elizabeth Vamplew's daughter-in-law, Karen, when CCTV gathered in the investigation had shown suspicious activity surrounding her movements on the night in question. Karen was seen on CCTV leaving her own home in King Street, Newark at about 12:35 on the night of the fire. She was seen wearing a hoodie and parking nearby, but not outside her mother-in-law's home, where she would usually park. Returning 30 minutes later, Vamplew was seen on CCTV running to her car at 1:13 a.m. before heading home. And 4 minutes after returning home, she again got into her car and drove back to the Eaton Court area before reporting the fire at 1:25 a.m. Vamplew told police she had become anxious when Elizabeth did not give her a ring that night as she normally did. She said she had gone to check on Anne, who used a wheelchair and had chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, but had forgotten the keys to the bungalow and returned to her own home to get them. She claimed she had arrived back at the bungalow to find it ablaze and heard Anne screaming inside. She said she broke in to try to help her, but was forced back by heavy smoke. During the investigation, it was found that the blaze could only have been started via the direct application of a naked flame to the bottom of Elizabeth's bed, and not, as Karen had suggested, by one of her mother-in-law's cigarettes. It was also found that in the months leading up to the murder, Karen had gradually been bleeding her mother-in-law dry, taking large amounts of money from her bank account up to the sum of £27,000 to service debts that she had hidden from her husband and her mother-in-law. This resulted in Elizabeth's bank limiting transactions on the account of £5 withdrawals, with Karen even accompanying her mother-in-law to the bank the day before the murder to have the limit removed. It was asserted by the prosecution that the motive behind the murder was to relieve Karen of the burden of having to look after Elizabeth and to access the inheritance money that her husband would be entitled to upon Elizabeth's death. After a trial at Leicester Crown Court, Karen was found guilty of the murder on Friday the 17th of May 2024 and was sentenced to life with a minimum of 32 years. Stephanie Langley, our fifth lady on the list, is an ex-cocaine smuggler who stabbed her ex-brother-in-law to death after a row in a pub got out of hand, telling the police, "I don't care," as she was arrested. On a normal afternoon in May 2023, Stephanie Langley had entered Matthew Bryant, her ex-brother-in-law's pub in Maidstone, and even though they had not had contact for over 20 years, began to make threats towards Mr. Bryant, and so was asked to leave the pub. Then, On the 11th of September 2023, Langley's son, Cameron Langley McCullough, informed Langley that he would be playing pool that day at Mr. Bryant's pub. To which she replied, "Enjoy your pool with that w***er later. I'll see you there. Crazy mum, remember?" Mr. Langley McCullough said that his mother had alleged that Mr. Bryant was a violent, abusive person who had committed RAPE. Later that day, Langley arrived at the Hare and Hounds at 5:53 p.m, and after serving her a drink, Mr. Bryant joined her at her table. It was reported that as Mr. Bryant had served Langley, she had made threats to have him killed, and that he had sat down to speak with her, but that she simply repeated that she was going to have him killed. She was later seen on CCTV trying to knock Langley's phone out of his hand whilst he tried to serve a customer, and it was reported that Langley then said to the customer in question, "Get a drink while he is still alive." After this altercation, Mr. Bryant's wife, Caroline, who at this point did not know Langley, asked Stephanie to leave and told her husband to call the police. And as Langley got up, she told him, "You're dead tonight." Upon leaving the pub, Langley drove her car to Maidstone East train station, leaving it parked there with her hazard lights on, while she walked back to the Hare and Hounds pub. Upon her arrival back at the pub at approximately 6:05 p.m, Mr. Bryant was outside of the pub on the phone to the police.
"Yeah, I'd just like to report something, please. Got a female. She's coming to my venue. I've known her for, Bennett. She's just threatened to kill me."
Right, and she's there at the moment?
No, she's walked out, but she's coming back, apparently.
Do you normally see her, or did she just show up today?
I've not seen her for 21 years.
Okay.
She came in here a few months back, and I was harried out by her son, saying, "Get away now, because she's gunning for you."
Okay, and that was a few
Now
months
just threatened to
ago.
have me killed. Oh, hang on a tick. Would you like to talk to her?
Is she there now?
Hang on, I've got the police on the phone.
He was heard calmly telling the operator that his former sister-in-law had threatened to kill him. It was at this point in the conversation that Langley approached him. Mr. Bryant said, "Hang on a tick, would you like to speak to her? I have got the police on the phone." But the phone was then knocked out of his hand. The phone was then knocked off camera, and Mr. Bryant walked over to the phone and bent down to pick it up off the floor. Stephanie then took this opportunity to use the knife that she had retrieved from her car to pounce, stabbing him a total of 3 times in a frenzied attack, twice in the back as he bent down and once in the chest as he stood up. He can then be heard telling the operator, "I have just been stabbed," as his wife and others around him came to his aid. Police arrived on scene quickly alongside paramedics who, despite their efforts, could not save Mr. Bryant, and he was declared dead at the scene at 6:50 p.m. At the same time as Matthew was lying on the cold hard ground, his blood spilling out of him and his life fading away, Langley, acting in a distressed manner, was shouting at the police who were trying to restrain her, to get away from her, and that she wanted to stab him. "I killed him. I don't care. I want him dead. I'm just so happy. I hate him so much. I hope he dies," she said. After her arrest and subsequent trial at Maidstone Crown Court, Stephanie was found guilty of murder and given a life sentence with a minimum of 24 years. Judge Philip St. John Stevens told Langley her actions were as a result of a belief that her victim had committed RAPE years earlier. He said, "You intended to kill him, an act of revenge for what you believe he had done. You are a highly intelligent woman, but a manipulative one who has given a lying account. You showed no remorse and carried on protesting to police that you hoped he would die, and you had done it because of what you believed." Detective Chief Inspector David Hyam of the Kent and Essex Serious Crime Directorate said, "Langley murdered a much-loved husband and popular landlord in cold blood. She planned her attack, stashing the murder weapon in her car ahead of her trip to the Hare and Hounds that evening. The offender gave such little regards to her actions that she carried out the attack in broad daylight." Our sixth deadly damoiselle is Anne-Marie Burrowes, an alcoholic who murdered her friend in cold blood after a drug-fueled drinking session went awry, stealing his bank card and confessing to the murder days later. On October the 30th, 2023, Anne-Marie Burrowes called the police to confess that just 4 days earlier, on the 26th of October, she had killed a man, but had refused to tell them who or where. In a second call, made on November the 19th, after she could no longer bear the guilt, she again phoned the police and confessed to the murder of Paul Knowles, a 56-year-old ex-Royal Navy veteran of 22 years, revealing what she had done to him and where they could find him, telling the call handler that she had killed him and didn't know if she had been tripping, as they had all been taking drugs that night. She expressed that her actions were a result of self-defense after Mr. Knowles had attacked her with the bottle first.
How do you know that there's been a murder?
Because I killed him, that's why.
Because you committed the murder?
I did do it for self-defence, yes.
Right, okay. Where did this happen, sorry?
I wouldn't know what day of the week it is. If anybody taking me serious at all, go to 68 Farriers Court, you'll find a dead body there.
Farriers Court? Farriers?
68 Farriers Court, I don't know whether I was tripping, we're all taking drugs that night, I don't know.
And who's the person that you think that you've committed this against?
Well, in self-defense, I didn't do it for no good reason.
Yeah, but who's the person that you've killed?
I don't know what his name was.
Okay, it was a male, was it?
Yeah. He attacked me for a bottle. He come to me 2 times with a bottle. I took it off for him, and then I hit him over the head a couple of times, and then I took his eyes out and shoved it about the back of his front.
Upon finding Paul's body at the location Burrowes had given on the phone, it was found that Paul was indeed dead, with significant injuries to his eyes, face and neck, and with a sock lodged in his throat. A manhunt then began, and Burrowes was tracked down the very next day at a property on Mountbatten Way, Ravensthorpe. Upon her arrest, she commented, "One of them ones where you wish you hadn't turned up at all, you know, a turn the clock back sort of thing."
What's your name?
Hello?
Sarah. Have you got any ID on you by chance? Not at all. You just look like someone else I'm looking for as well.
I am?
Yeah.
Is that me then?
Say again.
It must be me, I'll come with you, come on.
What's your name?
Come on, I'll come with you.
What's your name?
Anne-Marie, I'll come
Is it?
with you.
Give me your hands.
Thanks.
You're under arrest on suspicion of murder, okay?
Oh no.
Do you want to say anything about your defence? Proud to mention my questions and let line of court. Anything you do say may give evidence.
Right, thank you.
All right.
During interviews, Anne-Marie described how herself and Paul Knowles had been alcoholics and would regularly meet at his flat to drink, but that on October the 26th, things had suddenly become violent, and she claimed that on this visit to his home, he had become abusive and controlling and had tried to prevent her from leaving. Burrowes claimed that as she had tried to leave, he had attacked her with a bottle and that she had acted in self-defense, hitting him a couple of times before fleeing. She also claimed that although she didn't remember much of what happened after she hit him with the bottle and took his eyes out, she claimed that he was alive when she left his flat. A forensic post-mortem examination revealed that Knowles died from airway obstruction caused by the sock, along with facial fractures. Nathan Naylor, Knowles' son, previously paid tribute to his father, describing him as his hero and highlighting his service in the Royal Navy. Naylor said, "My dad was my hero. He spent 22 years and 1 day in the Royal Navy. He was a loving father, son and brother. Such a pure soul and loved by many. Fair winds and calm seas." On the 19th of July, the jury rejected her claims of self-defence and found her guilty of the murder of Paul Knowles at Cambridge Crown Court. And on the 23rd of July 2024, she was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 17 years. Our seventh murdering mademoiselle is an utterly diabolical story that you simply wouldn't believe had it not been proven in a court of law. Virginia McCullough murdered the two people closest to her, built them both tombs in the house she shared with them, and lived with their dead bodies, all while pretending to her family that they were still alive and well. And she managed to get away with it for 4 years, spending their savings and pensions as she went. It's utter madness. Now, because I have already covered this story in full in an earlier video on this channel that I will of course link at the end of the video, I will very quickly sum up the major details here, and if you want to find out more about the case, then please click the link at the end of the video or in the description and go there. On the night of the 17th of June 2019, Virginia prepared some drinks for her parents to drink before they went to bed. Unbeknown to them, however, she had laced them with prescription medication, hoping to kill them in their sleep so she could get her hands on their pension money to pay off mounting debts she had run up in her name and in theirs. The potion would indeed take effect on her dad John, who passed in his sleep due to the poisoned chalice she had given him. But her mum Lois, on the other hand, was a different story. When Virginia went in to check on her mother the next morning, she found her still alive, and so had to take action, beating her with a hammer and stabbing her with a knife a total of 8 times in order to complete the job. Upon murdering her parents, Virginia used breeze blocks and blankets to construct a tomb for her father, and then placed her mother's body in a sleeping bag in the wardrobe upstairs. She then went about living her life and pretending to family and friends they were both still alive but simply sheltering from COVID for the next 4 years, until finally, after her parents missed one too many doctor's appointments, the police conducted a welfare check and found that John and Lois were indeed missing, as the doctor had suspected. After confessing to the murder of her parents immediately, she was charged with murder. And on Friday, the 11th of October 2024, Virginia was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 36 years. The 8th killer woman on our list is a serial offender with 83 offences to her name, including assault, battery and wounding involving the use of a knife against an ex-partner. And in the early hours of November 20th, 2023, Lauren Harris exploded into a fit of rage and, alongside an accomplice by the name of David Webster, decided to murder her sugar daddy David Wilcox after he ran short of money and an argument at a drinking and smoking session they were having got out of hand. Lauren Harris, 29, was a resident of Colwyn Bay and met David Wilcox, a 65-year-old grandfather, outside of the Black Cloak pub in June 2023, with a relationship then developing between them, and Harris moving in with David at his home on Bayview Road. It was said that David was the generous type and was the type of man that wanted to look after people and help them turn their lives around, which is exactly what he wanted to help Lauren do. The 5-month-long relationship between the pair was said to be a tumultuous affair, with regular arguments and upset reported to have occurred. By the end of October, it was reported that David's bank account had gone overdrawn, with there previously having been approximately £12,000 in there to begin with. It was thought that Harris's frivolous spending was the reason that the account began to dwindle. It is around the end of October that Harris and Webster met, and this is when it is first believed that they began a relationship, sharing affectionate messages and discussing plans to share drugs and accessing funds to do this. In the lead up to his murder, Mr. Wilcox was witnessed on CCTV giving Harris and Webster numerous lifts, with the pair hanging around his address on more than one occasion. It appears that Mr. Ford suggested that Mr. Wilcox was essentially acting as a courier for the pair. On November the 19th, 2023, just hours before his death at approximately 3 p.m, David Wilcox dropped Webster and Harris off at a local retail park and then later dropped them at a nearby supermarket. At 6 p.m. that night, Harris and Webster meet up with their friend Thomas Whiteley, and at approximately 7 p.m, Mr. Wilcox texts Harris asking, "Can you let me know what the plans are for this evening?" before visiting the Black Cloak pub. At approximately 6 minutes past 8, Mr. Wilcox can be seen on CCTV arriving back at home, and this is the last time any camera captures him alive. At around 8:15 p.m, Harris, Webster and Whiteley enter Mr. Wilcox's home, where they spend the rest of the evening drinking and socialising together, with some of them taking drugs. It was noted that in the main, things between the group were fine. Throughout the course of the evening, it can be seen on CCTV that Harris, Webster and Whiteley come and go from David's house, the first time to use a cash point and buy vodka at a local shop, and another time with Harris leaving alone to use David's card at a local cash machine. Here, she tries to withdraw £50 from Mr. Wilcox's account, but it is stopped when an insufficient funds notification pops up on the screen. Harris also tries a second cash machine to withdraw funds from David Wilcox's account, again leaving empty-handed upon again getting the insufficient funds notification. It is noted that at this point, Webster had telephoned a local drugs line to put in an order, and they believed that was the reason Harris was going for the money, to use it to pay for the drugs. At 1:52 a.m. on the 20th of November, Harris returns to David's home empty-handed, and it was the prosecution's case that in the following 18 minutes an argument ensued and David Wilcox was then stabbed repeatedly in the chest by Harris and beaten over the head and face with a vodka bottle by Webster. They then stole his phone, watch and car and made their getaway, accompanied by Whiteley. CCTV from the property shows the trio enter David Wilcox's car and speed off, but within 1 minute, just along the road from Wilcox's home, they crash the car, with Whiteley fleeing alone and Harris and Webster leaving the scene together soon after. The pair are then caught on an audio recording camera, with Harris telling Webster, "I stabbed him twice." At 2:35 a.m, police are called about the crash by railway workers who witnessed it, and a police dog picks up human scent by Ivy Street car park. A subsequent chase leads to Webster's arrest. At 3:10 a.m, Whiteley calls the police claiming to have witnessed a robbery and stabbing, explaining that he was threatened to get in the car with the people responsible, which then crashed. He said that Harris knew the victim and Mr. Wilcox had been battered black and blue, then left at the house. After police had found the crashed car and discovered that Wilcox was the registered keeper, police attended David Wilcox's home and found him there, unresponsive in an armchair in his living room. 2 knives were also found in the car, one on the driver's seat and one on the back seat, both having traces of blood on them. At 5:17 a.m, Mr. Wilcox was pronounced dead, and by this point, Whiteley had been apprehended. On the evening of November the 20th, 2023, Harris is found in the centre of Colwyn Bay and is arrested, telling officers immediately that 2 other people are responsible. During the trial, the trio blamed one another for the death of Mr. Wilcox, with Harris going out of her way to pin the blame on the other 2. But after a trial on the 12th of the 8th, 2024, Lauren Harris and David Webster were sentenced to life in prison, with Harris receiving a minimum sentence of 25 years and Webster being sentenced to a minimum term of 23 years. Our 9th feminine dealer of death on the list is 23-year-old Bailey Heywood, a nursery worker from Oxford who callously stabbed her 45-year-old boyfriend Dale Bond to death after a heated argument at his home on the 13th of March 2024. On the morning of March 12, 2024, Miss Heywood made her way to her boyfriend Dale Bond's address to see him after he had taken 2 days off work and was looking forward to seeing her. Bailey then placed an order for alcohol for the 2 of them. It was then found that there was evidence that Bailey had attacked Dale by hitting and biting him, which Miss Heywood stated she had no recollection of, but that she had apologised to Dale for doing so. On the morning of the 13th of March, Miss Heywood once again set off for Dale's flat on her own, describing the fact that she had drank some gin on her own just before 8 a.m. Bailey then described the events of the day as follows. After having a drink together and eventually having sex, things escalated when Bailey received a text message from her ex-boyfriend, Tom Ellison. She said that Bond had become angry and had gone into the kitchen to get a knife and was shouting about Mr. Ellison, threatening to kill him. Heywood told the jury that in fear of being stabbed herself, she also got a knife from the kitchen. When asked by Mr. Benson why she didn't just leave the flat when Mr. Bond retrieved a knife, she said, "I'm not sure. I don't know. I just went and got a knife. I don't know. I don't know why. I just did it. I wasn't thinking about it. I just got scared and went and got the knife." Mr. Benson said, "You could have got out of the flat. Why didn't you?" She replied, "I don't know. I didn't decide to stab him. I went over to him to try and calm him down." Heywood then claimed that after retrieving the knife from the kitchen, she had gone and sat on the opposite sofa to Mr. Bond with a coffee table between them. She then stated, "He carried on saying he was going to kill Tom. He said again that he was going to kill that CUNT, and he went to stand up and I stabbed him. He had a knife in his hand and I thought he was going to stab me. I don't know why, I just did it. I was scared. I wasn't thinking. I just did it. I stabbed him once and I leant over, and the second as I stepped forward." She claimed that the stabbing happened out of fear and in self-defense, and denied that she had planned to cause him serious harm and murder him. Upon stabbing Bond twice, Heywood fled the scene, with the police being called to the aid of Bond by a member of the public, stating that they believed a man had been seriously injured and providing details of who had injured them. When officers arrived, they provided emergency first aid until paramedics and air ambulance services arrived, who then took over. But unfortunately, Mr. Bond was pronounced dead at the scene. Officers were then deployed to an address in Bicester, where Bailey Heywood was found in blood-stained clothing and arrested on suspicion of murder. As I previously mentioned, Miss Heywood's defence throughout her trial was that she acted in self-defence and out of fear. But the jury rejected her claims and instead decided that although no one but her truly knows the reason why she decided to stab Dale Bond, they were certain it was done so out of malice and not in self-defence as she had stated. The jury then found her guilty of murder, and on the 16th of September 2024 at Oxford Crown Court, she was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 17 years and 181 days. Senior Investigating Officer Detective Chief Inspector Will Crowther of the Major Crime Unit said, "Through our investigation, we did not find any evidence to support that this was a case of self-defense, and the jury rejected this explanation and, in my view, rightly convicted Heywood of murder." We may never know Heywood's motive for viciously stabbing Mr. Bond, an act which is all the more surprising when he was apparently someone she cared for and was in a relationship with. Our 10th murdering madam is Christine Kekkonen, who claims she cannot remember why or how she murdered her doting husband, Henry Kekkonen, 41. On the afternoon of May 9th, 2024, Christine's mother received a harrowing text from her daughter's phone, asking her to send police to her home as she had done something awful. Just after, another text was sent from Christine's husband's phone, and eventually Christine rang her mother and said, "I think I've killed him. I've stuck a knife in his neck. Please get the police here now. Please, I've done something awful." The police then attended their home in Dunford Terrace, Boltonborough, Somerset, and found Mr. Kekkonen dead at the scene from a single stab wound to the neck. Christine was immediately arrested and charged with her husband Henry Kekkonen's murder. Christine told the court during her trial at Bristol Crown Court that she was extremely fearful and thought he would hurt her. She also told the court that she believed people were watching her through her phone, which led to her being very scared. Mrs. Kekkonen, who has a history of mental illness, denied her husband's murder and told police she often disassociates and cannot remember the events of that day. The pair, who originally met online, with Henry living in Finland at the time, eventually married in 2011 and had been together ever since. Christine told the court that she had experienced a dip in her mental health in 2017 and was then diagnosed with depressive disorder and suicidal ideation. It is then in 2023 that she began to believe that she had been hacked and that people were listening and watching her through her phone. On the afternoon of Mr. Kekkonen's death, Mrs. Kekkonen said that she had woken up while her husband was still asleep. Then he sat up and went towards me, and I was so fearful. I thought he would hurt me, she told the jury. She said she backed off towards her side of the bed and was holding a knife in her right hand. I pushed him away. I wanted him to get away from me, she said. Miss Sweet asked her when she noticed that the knife had made contact with Mr. Kekkonen. I realised when I saw all of the blood, she replied. Miss Sweet then asked, did you kill Henry on purpose? Miss Kekkonen replied, no, absolutely not. Despite her plea of not guilty, Christina was found guilty of the murder of her husband Henry Kekkonen at Bristol Crown Court on the 29th of November 2024 and is due to be sentenced on Friday the 28th of March 2024. Senior Investigating Officer Detective Superintendent Lawrence Spearenberg said Henry was a loving husband who, aged 41, had so much more life to give. Those opportunities were cruelly taken from him. Christine Kekkonen is clearly a vulnerable woman, but her actions that afternoon have cut short the life of a man who completely doted on her. I am pleased for Henry's family that the woman responsible for his death has today been convicted of his murder, and my thoughts remain with them. Our 11th and the final killer on our list of wicked women is Rebecca Moore, a 25-year-old sex worker who formed a devious plot alongside two of her accomplices to lure illicit substances dealer Sakkad Ali to his death. At approximately 4:26 a.m. on March the 9th, 2024, Rebecca Moore acted as bait to entice Sakkad Ali to Ponderosa Park in Sheffield, where her accomplices Barney Griffin and Jack Douglas were lying in wait. Upon his arrival, the pair, aged 18 and 17, attacked him in a pre-planned ambush, chopping at him with machetes and knives. During the trial, it was heard that Griffin and Douglas, who were best friends and grew up together, had been dealing drugs in Sheffield. And they had found out that Mr. Ali had been dealing in their area and decided they were going to put an end to his business dealings by putting an end to him. Upon hearing of the plan, Rebecca Moore was only too happy to get involved and offered herself up as bait to Mr. Ali, calling his phone and offering him her services as a sex worker and insinuating she was looking to buy illegal substances. She then cajoled Mr. Ali with further calls asking him where he was to entice him to come and meet her, enabling the trio to fulfill their heinous plan and take his life in cold blood. It was later found that although Rebecca Moore was publicly proclaiming her innocence, she was, behind what she believed to be closed prison doors, emphatically boasting about helping her boys attack Mr. Ali for selling illegal substances on their turf, while she was in custody at HMP Newhall in Wakefield. Footage played in court of Mr. Ali's murder showed Sakkad Ali, who was armed himself, backing away and pleading with his attackers, but his attackers were out for blood, stabbing and swiping at him mercilessly, giving Mr. Ali no quarter as they set about him violently. A post-mortem revealed that he was stabbed a total of 16 times and that he died due to major blood loss from a wound to his left thigh. After the murder, an investigation was launched, and on the 12th of March, Griffin and Douglas handed themselves in to police, with Griffin texting his mother that he was sorry and that he loved her. Moore, however, who was also apprehended on the 12th of March, did not want to come in willingly and instead gave a false name when police caught up with her in an attempt to evade capture.
What's your name, my love, please?
Lauren.
Lauren. Have you got any ID on you or anything?
No, I
please?
don't. Why? I'm not doing anything.
No, I'm not saying you have, but we're just looking for somebody. So
I've only just come out today.
Out of?
Out of my friend's house just around here.
Right.
Right.
Have you got like a bank card or anything on you?
I don't know my friend, sorry. It's not it.
The Ponderosa.
Lauren.
And your surname?
Smith. What?
Normal spelling?
Yeah, it's a TH. But,
and what's your date of birth, please?
My date of birth is 18th of October,
yeah.
1998.
Just come up to where I am, please.
What's going
Just
on?
take your hat off for me.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Your name's Rebecca Moore, isn't it?
Why?
You're Rebecca, right?
That's my working
At this
name.
time, Rebecca,
Wait.
listen to me, okay? So at this time, you're under arrest on suspicion of murder, okay? Because you're alleged to be involved in the murder of Psychad Ali, okay?
No.
This was on the 9th of March 2024, okay? So you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence, okay?
Why am I under arrest?
Upon finding out what she was being arrested for, Moore broke down and protested at the arrest. During the trial, it was also mentioned that Moore had made comments to the guards at HMP Newhall that it was her boys that had stabbed Mr. Ali with a machete and cut his artery, and that he had deserved to bleed to death. And whilst in the showers with a fellow prisoner, Moore was heard giggling and stated that she planned on using her mental health as a means of getting off with the charge. On a further occasion, to another inmate, Moore had explained that although she didn't kill Ali, it was done by the two lads who did it because they didn't like that an Asian lad was sleeping with a white person. She also went on to say that she did not kill him, but that she set it up. After a trial at Sheffield Crown Court, all three were convicted of the murder, with Griffin and Douglas being sentenced to detention at His Majesty's pleasure to a minimum of 16 years and 15 years respectively, and Moore being sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 14 years and 106 days. Now, if you have enjoyed this video and you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to help us grow the channel and to keep up with our next video that should be with you very soon. And if you enjoyed this video and haven't done so already, why not watch the video on screen now, which is part 1 of this 2-video series where we showcased 12 further killer women who were jailed in the UK in 2024. Thank you all for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one, when it will once again be time for more true crime.